Da 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 da. Just walking by myself with my cute little bunnies and birds, holding my basket all by myself in the woods, spending some time alone. Oh, wait a second. Who the heck's that? Hi everyone, this is Erin, and today I'll be replicating a piece of concept art from Sleeping Beauty made by Eyvind Earle. I have my flathead brushes. I also have my Winsor Newton number 6 brush there, some water, some paper towel, and my acrylic gouache. So this is officially the longest video ever, 40 minutes. Let's see if I can do it. I have only sped things up a tiny, teeny bit so that you can see my process in almost real time. And I'm starting here with the white. I always activate my gouache first with a little bit of water. I start with a small amount of water. I get that gouache nice and creamy, and then I start to add in the darker colors. You always want to start with your lightest color, mixing dark colors into that lighter color. It's just a way smarter way to mix paint. And look at that tiny little kiss of red. Mwah, there you go. That red is there to tone down the green that I'm making so that it's a little bit more diminished. And the crumbs are back. What the heck is wrong? I think it might be the white paint, actually. I think it might be the white gouache that I'm using. Acrylic gouache is heavier, more opaque gouache. You cannot reactivate acrylic gouache. And it has a chalk filler to create more opacity. But I guess it does dry up a little bit, so you get these little crumbs. But I also think this brush kind of sucks, so I'm not sure. There's a combination. I need some new brushes in my life. Yeah, so putting the background on, the consistency is, you know, that melted ice cream consistency that I'm always talking about. And you go across, do one coat, and then see how it dries. And if you need to make a lighter or a darker coat, that's what you do for the second one. And for me, I realized this background coat was a bit too dark. So I've added quite a bit of white here. Gouache tends to dry darker. Some colors dry lighter. It's very confusing. It depends on the pigment. But in this case, it dried a little bit darker, so I added a lot of white, more water, and now I'm creating the ground. So I'll talk through this process with a little bit more focus here. So focusing. So I've used the background color, which is cyan, white, a tiny speck of red. And now I'm adding quite a dollop of primary yellow. You can see that it's a very bright yellow green. So I added some red to tone it down, but I added too much red. And this is why it's so important to just add like the smallest amount of color as you're mixing. Don't overdo it because you can't remove color. So what I'm doing now is I'm bringing in all of that lighter shade that I made for the sky, plus more of the cyan blue to get back to a green color, because I really lost it when I put in the red. And the red is there to diminish, right? It's to bring down the chroma or the saturation. But I did add too much. So now here I am busy trying to make that green perfect. And I'm adding a tiny bit of water at a time to keep the creamy consistency, because the more paint you add, the thicker the mixture will become. And so laying on my ground and doing it, you know, quickly. With gouache, you want to work fast as you can without going over an area too many times, because then you have the risk of picking up paint and losing your smooth finish. And there we go. So now the next thing we're making is are the sort of the shadowed areas of the grass. So we're making a darker green here, adding in more of the cyan, a little hint of black, just a tiny bit of black in there. Black goes a long way, of course, being so dark. And getting this nice, I love this color green. What would you call this green? It's like a blue green. Well, it is a blue green. It almost reminds me sort of like army fatigues. Like it's not an olive green, it's a little bit more blue than that. Anyway, there I go with my color. And I've patted off the excess paint. And now I'm putting my paintbrush on the side here, and you can see I'm kind of jiggling my wrist a little bit back and forth to get these rough edges to the line. And yeah, it's not so much painting like in a paint stroke. It's more jittering so that I get a rougher edge to these shadows. But as I'm doing this, I'm like, you know what, this is a bit too wet. The paint is too smooth. So I get a bigger brush, my big flathead brush here. There's no water on the brush now. Put it into my paint, get rid of the excess paint on a paper towel, and then now I'm doing this dabbing, this really quick dabbing. And again, this is almost in real time, so you can see how fast I am. And I'm so fast, but it's just this like jittery motion where you kind of drink a lot of coffee. So I recommend drinking 4 or 5 cups of coffee. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Don't do that. That would be bad. But it is kind of this jittery motion. So we're creating a brown now for the background trees. I make this brown a little too dark, so later I basically just add white to my mixture and go over the trees. But I'm using the grass color, so this background color. You can basically use any color to start a brown mixture, because brown is really a mixture of all the primaries at different amounts, right? Like your brown recipe, that sounds delicious. Your recipe for brown really depends on if you want a warm brown, a cool brown, a dark brown, light brown, you know, there's like almost an infinite number of browns. And I've made one that's on the higher value, so there's a lot of white added to it because I used that grass color that had a lot of white. So there's a lot of white, and then I added the red and yellow, so it's quite a warm, light brown. High value, warm brown. There we go, sort of caramelly. And twisting my brush there, this is the technique that I use to get a sharper tip to my brush. And then I press down with more pressure to get a thicker stroke. So going from thick to thin, this is something I've talked about in a lot of videos. This brush in particular, I'm a little frustrated because the Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes, and this is a number 6 brush, which refers to the thickness of the brush itself. I'm not so crazy about the new brushes that they're making in this series because they're shorter. So the bristles are shorter. I'm not getting as fine a tip. Yeah, and I don't know if that's because they're running out of the sable material. I need to look into this. I'll look into that unless anybody else wants to look into it, and let me know in the comments below what is happening with the Series 7 paintbrushes. So yeah, put all those trees in there. I kind of skipped over, I cut out some of it because it's just the, excuse me, the same process over and over again. And now I'm creating this really beautiful buttery yellow using the primary yellow and the brown mixture that I had already made for the trees, plus white. And you can see again, I'm adding a little bit of water at a time and mix, 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 mix. Mixing is such a methodical process for me. Like I really want to mix that paint together. I really want to create a very, how would I say this? It's just blending all the different ingredients, like the binder and the pigment with the chalk that's in that acrylic gouache with the water. You want all of those molecules to blend so that you get a smooth consistency. And so I've blended them all to make this lovely buttery yellow. And not that butter is this color. Is it this color? Anyway, this buttery yellow, which is the base for our large tree that sits right in the center of the composition. It's such an interesting choice for a composition to have this giant tree in the center, sort of dissecting the composition into 2 sections, right? We have the section where Aurora is gallivanting through the forest with her animal friends in her basket. And then on the other section is the prince. So this tree sort of acts as this visual separation between the 2 parts of the narrative, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, and this yellow also serves as the highlights of the tree, right? Because the tree itself is quite dark. It's, checking if it's wet, see? Moving my illustration board around to see if it's shiny, then I know I can't put my second coat on yet because that means the gouache is still wet. But what I was saying is this light yellow serves as the lighter areas of the tree where the sun is, shining onto the tree. And now I'm making the darker areas. So this is the bark of the tree, and I'm using my brown mixture, that light. I think I put in some of that creamy yellow, and adding a bit more red, a little bit of black, and just slowly adding my colors in until I create the brown that I'm looking for. And I do really focus on temperature when I look at browns. Like, is it a warm brown? Is it a cool brown? Does it look like more of a, I guess, an ash brown, which is not as red? And this is sort of right in the middle. It's not super ashy, but it's also not super warm. And making this kind of dry brush effect at the end without a dry brush really has to do with pressure. And as I stroke down at the bottom of the stroke, I really ease up on the pressure, and I don't reload my brush, so that by the time I get to those end strokes, there's less paint on my brush, so it's easier to get that sort of more scumbled effect on the end. See, I remembered it's called scumbling, isn't it? I used to call it stumbling because I thought you were like stumbling over the page. Anyway, and utilizing again the number 6 brush and how I can press down more with more pressure to make a thicker line. And then as I ease up, I kind of flick my wrist and get those nice little gestures at the bottom of the tree there as the stroke goes outwards to define the roots of the tree. Getting off the excess paint there so that I can get a little bit more of this rough texture, and doing smaller strokes now. And you can see how the light underneath is coming through, and it looks like real bark. I love that. It's so cool. And this is the tree that the prince is hiding behind. That sneaky boy. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, I chose this piece because there's bunnies in it and Easter's coming up. I love Easter so much. I'm a big fan. Yeah, when I was a kid, my mom and I used to go on car trips all the time. She'd always take me on what was called a magical mystery tour, and we just drive around. We just drive somewhere, right? Like maybe a couple hours away, and it was like a cheap date because we didn't have a lot of money. So she'd take me on these magical mystery tours. And one year we went driving to the point where we had to sleep in the car, and we slept like we had a bed in the back. And then I woke up and it was Easter morning, and I guess I had forgotten as a kid, or I didn't know, and I woke up to an Easter basket and there was all these eggs in it, and then there was this little stuffed animal camel that I called the Easter camel, and great memory. So I love Easter, so I wanted to do an Easter painting. I love all holidays. I'm such a sucker for a holiday. Yeah, back to the painting. So making the grass here, I've turned my illustration board upside down, so that as I do each brush stroke, the tips can be, it's easier to go with gravity, right? Like if I'm going downwards, then I'm not going against gravity, kind of, which sounds really weird, but it's true. It's like the stroke going downwards, it's easier to ease up on the pressure and make that nice fine tip if I'm going downwards than upwards. And that might not be true for everyone, but so here I try it the other way. And the reason I'm doing it the other way here is because it curls around in front of the tree, and it seemed like it would be easier to control that positioning if I had it the right way up. So, always move around your canvas or your illustration board, your paper, so that it serves you. It's like it's setting yourself up for success. So just sort of experimenting with which way it feels best for the detail that you're doing. So I've mixed some black in with a little bit of red, and I believe there is some cyan in there. This isn't straight up black, and there's white in there as well. It doesn't need to be straight up black. If it was, it would be too dark. So a lot of the times when you're using something that looks black in a painting, it's actually a mixture. It's actually a dark brown usually, a sort of, because it'll be too black. It would have too much contrast with the bark around it. So, but it does look black, doesn't it? It looks really dark. It's surprisingly not. It's just that what it is being placed on top of, like look there, it looks like it's straight up black, but it's not straight up. Okay. These little details were fun to do. This is another thing that you kind of just go for it. The more confident you are with something like this, the better. And you can fake confidence for sure if you don't just practice. Like I highly recommend practicing and look at me trying to get this brush to have a finer tip. I sent back my Series 7 number 2 brush, and I'm using this Da Vinci number 2, and this is not working very well for me because this brush is used in a lot of classes that I teach. I teach watercolor workshops, and people that, you know, I can't really police everyone when I'm doing a workshop, and people will just leave their brushes in the water, which is like sacrilege, but it wrecks these little brushes. And this is quite an expensive, nice brush, but the tip has been schmooshed. So I keep trying to make it have a finer tip. These highlights on the trees are terrible. Yuck. I'm really disappointed with what I did there. I was rushing it. These ones are better because they're a little drier, so I'm getting a bit more of that dry brush effect. But yeah, look, they're totally different. Like two sides of the composition. I've got trees on one side with these sharp highlights, and the other one is smoother and rougher, and yeah. Bad girl. I'm now mixing, as you can see, some primary yellow and black. Primary yellow and black together. Ooh, such a nice deep green that you can make with those. But if I add a little bit of cyan, it makes this gorgeous color that is perfect for doing shadowed plants. If you want to create plants that look like, you know, they're a bit more dramatic and they stand out. And a lot of Eyvind Earle's pieces, same with Mary Blair, they did this effect where they would do some of their foliage in what would appear to be black, right? But again, as I mentioned before, it's not straight up black. It's a tonal black. It has other colors that have been put in it so that it's not so dark and has more depth to it. And yeah, Mary Blair and Eyvind Earle, they both would use this really dark color to make foliage, and that added to the sense of light and dark. That added to the feeling of when you're walking through the forest and there's sunlight coming in through the trees and things are dappled, and you have some things that are in, you know, deep in the shadows, and then some things that are lit up. And so by creating foliage that's very, very dark and some of it's really light, yeah, you get the sense of walking through a forest. And if you've watched these videos, you know that these little plants, that this particular type of foliage is quite popular in the mid-century. Both Eyvind Earle and Mary Blair did these sort of plants. I don't know who did them first. I want to know. It could have been Mary. I think it might have been Mary. But I finally realized, oh yeah, do the stem and then do the spines of the leaves first, and then do the leaves around them, and you get a better position. And this little plant, this was fun. It's a little bit less symmetrical and perfect. And here you can see that I'm doing these little teeny tiny strokes to get in the shape of the leaves. And yeah, being a little more delicate with this. You can see I've really slowed down to do this one. I just think it's so cute. But this brush, yeah, it sucks. I am on the hunt. If anyone can give me any advice, I know Gina's told me. Gina's one of my viewers and a friend. She's told me what brush I should get, and I'm just not listening. Gina, I have to get the brush you were talking about. But if anyone has a suggestion for a really great small thin-tipped detail brush, let me know. But that's my goal, is I'm going to find one. It's going to happen. Yeah, so these, again, those little plants, putting them in the foreground adds this lovely depth as well. And here we go. We're going to start fresh. So I've got my white, and again, activating the white first, slowly adding in the yellow, the red. Always start with your lightest color. And that's because as you add in those other colors, you have more control. You can control your mixture. You can never take paint away, but if you slowly add, you'll eventually get to the color you want. And mixing darker colors into a light color, you know, even if it's yellow, which is light, even mixing yellow into white is smarter than mixing white into yellow, because you'll have a change happen much quicker and more noticeably if you add a darker color into a lighter color. And this is now me making the skin tone for Aurora, also known as Sleeping Beauty, but this is before she went to sleep, so she's not Sleeping Beauty yet. She's still Aurora. And speaking of sleeping, she slept for 100 years, and all I can say is lucky lady. My sleep has been pretty, I've been having good sleeps, but short sleeps lately. I've been waking up very early, mysteriously. So when I read that she slept for 100 years, I was like, no wonder she's beautiful. Anyway, so this mixture is, mostly white, little tiny bit of yellow, mixing in a little bit of the red, a little bit of cyan to tone it down so it's not just straight up pink. And then I realized, it's too dark because gouache tends to dry darker. And so I added more white to the mixture. And and then I was able to get a nice skin tone for Aurora. Now I've got cyan and black mixing into that pinky skin tone that I made. I need a little bit of red put in there too. And see how I mix the red in with the cyan first? I didn't need to do that, but I enjoy doing that. I enjoy sort of creating the color, like pre-mixing colors. So if I know I need a tiny amount of purple, then I'm going to pre-mix that purple and then bring it into my mixture. And that's just the way I mix. I don't know if that's a necessary step, but I enjoy that step. And so I've made this what I would call like a dark lilac, sort of periwinkle, that is not a very saturated color, for her sleeves, her lovely poofy sleeves. And again, trusting the shapes that I'm seeing in the piece of concept art. It's hard sometimes to trust those shapes. It's like I often want to do what I think the shape is, but that's not smart. That's a rookie mistake. Trust the shapes. It's the same. I say the same thing to students when drawing from nature or anything referential. If you're drawing from reference or painting from reference, paint what you see, not what you think. Right. So it's really about observing. And so if you're observing, you see these shapes. You start to see individual shapes. Oh, I think my voice just did like a weird whistle. So I apologize if that hurt. I'm not going to make any more comments about ASMR, but I did realize that the A stands for, what is it? It's, oh, never mind. I'm never going to get this right. It's like, never mind. Okay, shush. I do these in one take, remember? So let's stay on track, stay on target. What's that from? Anyone know? Write it in the comments below. Stay on target. Okay, making this red. This is a slightly diminished red with on the orange side. So again, this is the tomato soup red that we talk about. Sort of. Yeah, sure it is. And putting in this skirt, I'm noticing, not for the first time, how tiny the waists are of these Disney characters. And yeah, there's not much to say about that. I mean, it looks cute, right? Cute little waist, but like, come on. I should have just made it bigger just because I can. Why not? But yeah, painting in her skirt. You'll notice that when I do shapes, I don't paint the outline of the shape and then fill it in. I start at the top, or I start in an area and I work my way down. And then I can kind of fiddle with the shape itself as I go. And I see here that it needs to be a bit thicker. But yeah, it tends to dry nicer. You have a more flat, even finish if you don't do the outline first and then fill it in. And just doing another coat on her face. And then I do her little hands too. But you can see the face is a bit lumpy now. Who wants a lumpy face? Yeah. It's the white. It's definitely the white gouache that I have. Maybe it's a bit too old now. It's getting a little bit clumpy. A little clumpy and lumpy as they get older. Okay, what are we doing now? Oh yeah, we're doing her back leg, her adorable little black back leg. And again, so you can see here, I'm trying to figure out where to put that back foot. This is another example of trusting the reference and not drawing or painting what you think you see, but what you actually see, because it would never occur to me to do that back foot so small and in that position, but it's because her back leg is bent. Her knee is bent because she's walking forward. And I'm not very good with anatomy that way, and I wouldn't have thought to do that. So, you know, just trust the real artist, which was Eyvind Earle. He knew where to put that back leg. I keep forgetting. I keep thinking this is a Mary Blair piece, but it's not. It's Eyvind. And it's easy to make that mistake during this period because they were both working for Disney and they were both doing some of the same elements in their paintings, like those plants and, yeah, similar bodies and whatnot. Oh, speaking of this era, so Sleeping Beauty, which came out, when did it come out? In 1959. I think it was released on January 29th, 1959. And Eyvind Earle had dreamt his whole life about working for Disney. This was like his lifelong dream. And when he was 18 years old in 1934, he applied to Disney, but he was rejected. And then he kept applying like every week for the next 3 years. So he was very tenacious. He was like, I'm getting a job there. And then he got a job in 1951. So that was after he had served in the military, after he had taken a bunch of art classes. He had been making Christmas cards with another really great artist who I probably will cover and talk about another time. But after all that, he was hired, 1951. So from 1934 to 1951, he was gunning for that job, and he finally got it. And then, you know, not long after that, Disney was like, I want you to do all of the backgrounds for Sleeping Beauty. I want you to be the inspiration for the aesthetic of Sleeping Beauty, which I think is pretty remarkable, you know, like, yeah, big success. I also was going to share with you, oh, look at the little basket. Just got her cute little basket. I was going to share that Earle, when he started to work on Sleeping Beauty, he used historical influences, which I've talked about in other videos. Like he looked back at old tapestries from the medieval era. But he also was looking to, he was getting inspired by artists that were working for the animation studio UPA. And if you go and do some research on UPA, a lot of really cool, stylish cartoons came out of that studio, and they were very heavily influenced by artists like Matisse and Cezanne and Picasso, and just totally embracing the modern look and abstraction and flat shapes and all this cool stuff that was groundbreaking, right? Like it was just totally not what you would normally see in animation. And so Earle used that aesthetic as part of his inspiration as well. So it really created this sort of innovative look, as well as mixing in this medieval tapestry influence. And so, yeah, the outcome is pretty unique. And Disney just was totally dedicated to this look, to Eyvind having his vision come through. But unfortunately, that meant the movie took years and years to make and went way over budget, and a lot of the other animators were pissed off because his backgrounds were so detailed and hard to keep up with. Anyway, back to the painting. We've got her little face here. This face turned out nicely. There's her brows. And then for her eyes, it was just this, or her nose, it just goes down from the brow, a straight line, and a little dot, and there's her cute little face. Adorbs. And her little headband. Yeah. Gosh, she's got good hair. So much good hair in Disney. I think what I'm going to do is maybe, where are we at? What are we doing here? What are we doing? What's being made next? I'm making, I'm making the prints. Oh, good. No, I'll keep talking. I keep thinking I'm going to put on music because I'm intimidated that I have to talk for 40 minutes, but I'm a good talker, so far so good. Yeah, we're making the prince's skin tone, and his skin tone is more ashy. Like it's not as pink. It's a little bit more on the cool side. This reminds me so much of the foundation I used when I was a teenager, which blows my mind that I used foundation as a teenager, because like, come on. I was lucky. I didn't even really break out as a teen. I had super bad BO, like I stunk. I still stink, but I didn't get acne that bad, and I don't know why. I would just cover my whole face with so much foundation, and it was like this color, which is definitely not my skin tone. Anyway, making this color, we're creating the prince's whole outfit from this base. So that base sort of skin tone, prince's skin tone, not everyone's skin tone, but this prince has that skin tone. And then I use that as the base for the different browns for his outfit, his like tunic and his little pants. And yeah, that's why I started a new palette here, because I'm going to use all these different browns for the different parts of his outfit. And here I do his little tunic. And I think so. I love this scene because there's a few things that I want to say about this scene. Number one is the prince, his pose, the gesture here is great, because as you're about to see, as I do his legs and his pants here, you can see I'm adding a little bit more red and some cyan to get this a warm brown that's not too red, you know, but it does have like a warmer, it leans towards the warm. But watch as I do his legs there. There's sort of this strange gesture that's happening here, where the one leg, so I wonder what leg that is, if that's his left leg, is sort of bending in an odd way, and then his boots moving forward. You'll see when I get the boots in, but it really looks like he's been walking through the woods, and then he like stops and does a double take. So he's like, his body's moving forward, but then part of him is like, what? Because he's seeing this gorgeous lady frolicking through the woods. And so he's like stopping dead in his tracks, and he's doing a double take. And yeah, it's a great gesture. He's also sort of hiding behind a tree, which is like, I don't know, 20% creepy and then like 80% cute, because he's like, you know, just come across her in the woods and he's all like, oh, who's this lady? But he is kind of being sneaky, but you know, like she's fully dressed, so it's not too creepy. Oh man. And the other thing that I think is fun about this scene is this sort of follows, or I think right after this moment when he spots her in the woods, she sings that song. She sings a song about like one day her prince will come, and she describes him, and she's telling all the little animal friends that she has about this prince. And like, and then he arises he arises from the dead. No, he shows up like in her life, and I think that's really sweet. It's like she manifested him. So there you go. You have to make a list. It's really important. Make a list, and then you'll have some guy sneak around the woods watching you. That's my promise. There you go. My advice. I love his little hairdo. I feel like his hair looks sort of, it reminds me of Link's hair from The Legend of Zelda. He's got like this cute little hair. Oh, and speaking of which, look at this cute little hat. Adorable hat. But yeah, the prints in general, the shapes, again, not my best work, I gotta say. I'm sorry, Eyvind, because I did not do the prince justice. Those legs are a bit too short. Overall, the prince is, you know, he's not super tall. That's okay. We don't mind. We won't. I was about to say we won't kick him out of bed. Jeez. All right. Look at me get all excited when I start to paint a prince. Yeah, focus. I'm very distracted. Okay, let's get back to this painting. Speaking of which, there is a part coming up where I completely forgot to record at the right speed, and I recorded a whole part in slow-mo, so that part's just not in, but it's okay. It's nothing important. While I do his face, that worked out okay, but then check out his mouth. It's like he's frowning. He's like, ew, who's that? He looks really mean, so I get rid of that. It's like, we're gonna give you a better face. Which is such a great thing about painting, right? You just paint right over that. You can start fresh. And making his cape now. So using the brown as the base, adding in some of the primary red, and that way we get red that is quite diminished. It's almost the tomato soup red, but not quite. It's a little less red, a little less saturated. And getting it in there. I wonder if I should have done the cape first. No, this is probably the best order, is to do it last. You know, that's the thing, is there is no real rule when it comes to these type of elements, what to paint first. But it is a rule, in my opinion, always start with the background as like a full background, because then paint on top of it. It's much easier that way. Little feather, another example of going from thick to thin or thin to thick by using pressure. And look, he's a bit short. That's okay. He's way off in the distance. Oh, there's so many comments I want to make sometimes. I'm like, no, watch, you're on, this is public. This is public domain. Anybody can hear this. Mixing up my final brown for these adorable little bunnies. Just look at this, such simple shapes, making these really cute little rabbits. And for Easter, and I already told you my Easter story. Don't really have any other stories except for the Easter bunny has definitely forgotten where I live. I don't know about all of you, but I haven't had an Easter basket since I was a kid. I feel like, yeah, he has no idea where I ended up. That's okay. Look at that little butt. So cute. And those ears. There is a squirrel in the original piece, but I left the squirrel out. I was like, I can't, I'm done. This is going to be so long. And then look at who came to visit me. Oh, check it out. I didn't have time to paint the squirrel, but I really wanted to show you Meow. That's the cat's name. And my view out my window. So that was Meow, everyone. That's the cat that keeps coming to visit me. She hasn't been here in a few days, so I hope she comes back. But yeah, she likes to watch me paint. It's really cute. And look at, this is in slow-mo. Is this slow-mo? Well, this is like actual real time. There. And then the adorable little noses. Boop, boop. We're doing the birds now. So this is almost entirely just white. I think this is just straight up white. Maybe a tiny bit of that brown got in there. But again, like the bunnies, some simple shapes working together to create what we know is a bird, right? Yeah, and then, whoa, really slow mode. Holy, what's going on? I'm just leaving this. There's no way I'm redoing this voiceover, but this is great. Now you get to see in slow-mo how I mix my colors. And yeah, wow. I feel like there should be some sexy music right now. Don't you think? Like, look at that, so sensual. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm gonna pause and speed this up. I'm pausing, speeding up. I'm sitting here laughing. Oh my God, that was funny. So yeah, now it's like, it's still slow, but this is 100% natural speed now. But there was this whole section, like a 14-minute section that was recorded by accident in slow motion, and it would not, there was no way I could get it from my phone to my iPad. Like, it just would not upload for me. And I'm having some problems with my technology. I definitely need a new iPad, or I need like more storage, because yeah, this whole process has been difficult to get things from one place to another. So you can see that the sort of gold colored foliage at the top of the frame coming in, that section of the video is lost. It's lost in time. It's gone. It didn't work because the whole thing was in slow-mo, but these little dots were the last detail. And there we go. We're done. We did it. And there she is, Sleeping Beauty and her creeping prince. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Happy Easter, everyone.